Welcome to Reproductive Justice Now. I'm Karen Hunt. This month, we look at natural gas hydraulic fracturing, a controversial drilling method which threatens Philadelphia's drinking water and potentially reproductive health. We also join protesters in Harrisburg, rallying against a bill that would deny access to abortion to Pennsylvania women and force them to go to other states. Philadelphia has high-quality drinking water, for years exceeding the standards set by the EPA. That's due to this, the Delaware River. This river and its tributaries provides drinking water for 17 million people in 4 different states, including you and me. North of here, about a mile or so beneath this watershed, lies the Marcellus Shale. It's a geological formation with hard-to-reach pockets of natural gas that energy companies are very anxious to get at. The Delaware River Basin Commission will meet in Trenton, New Jersey to vote on regulations concerning how much, if any, natural gas drilling to allow in this watershed. For Philadelphians living downstream, the stakes could not be higher. Hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, is the term used for the method drillers use to recover gas deposits in the shale. A mixture of sand, chemicals, and a lot of water, between 3 to 5 million gallons of water per well, are pumped down at high pressure to break rock up and recover the gas. Frack wastewater is treated after use and ends up back in the river it came from, which concerns a lot of people.
What the frack? What the frack? What the frack? What the frack?
Thousands of activists protesting natural gas fracking converged outside the Philadelphia Convention Center in September, while members of the oil and gas industry organization Marcellus Shale Coalition met indoors.
I'm here on behalf of planet Earth.
We spoke with former City of Philadelphia Health Commissioner Dr. Walter Sue about the potential health effects for Philadelphians should fracking fluid be mixed in with our drinking water. Thank you for coming.
Thanks a lot, Karen.
So let me ask you, how did you get involved with the issue of fracking?
Well, you know, I've been in public health my entire professional career. A friend of mine actually described for me this process called fracking, and he said it was such incredulity. He said, you know, this is unbelievable that they pour this water with toxic fluids that nobody is allowed to know what's in it deep into the ground, and somehow or another they believe it's not going to contaminate the aquifers and the streams. And he couldn't believe it, and the more I started looking into it, I don't believe it.
Well, what is there something, I mean, what kind of chemicals are these chemicals, and how will they get into the water?
Well, they did publish a list. There's at least like 100 different chemicals that are potentially in this water. But if you think about it, the logic behind what they do, they take good water that's, you know, possibly drinkable. They contaminate it with all these volatile organic compounds, sand, diesel fuel, benzene, all kinds of things that none of us would ever think about drinking. They pour it or pump it down like a mile into the ground in an effort to try to break open the Marcellus Shale. They even turn it sideways so that actually it would be very hard for some type of cement to contain this this pumped water.
It's just going horizontally.
And it's going horizontally. And then they use it to break open the shale. All the sand opens up the cracks there, supposedly to release the gas. And somehow or other, these millions of gallons of water that's in there is going to mysteriously stay there and never, ever leave. And no one who's ever been in a cave, for example, would believe that this water is going to not potentially get into our ground drinking water.
I guess the main thing that you know, that I'm starting to find out, and I want to find out more about, are you know, what kind of chemicals are they? What are the possible health risks to people if these chemicals get into the water?
Well, as I mentioned, there's like a long list of chemicals, which I don't really memorize or know all of them. Some of them, though, are benzene or benzene derivatives, which are known carcinogens and that can cause leukemia. There are petroleum distillates, which is otherwise known as paint thinner, which can be used to remove paint, but it should not be in our drinking water. There's formaldehyde, which we know is also a known carcinogen, which can be harmful. And there are other similar substances that are placed in the water for what purposes, I don't know. I would say, though, that a lot of this stuff is considered proprietary by the industry, and they do not want to share or disclose what's in their contaminated water.
What would concern you most for Philadelphians?
Yeah. Well, I don't think Philadelphians fully understand where their tap water comes from, but the two major supplies come from the Schuylkill River and the Delaware River. And that water, which we're near the end of the travel of those rivers, those waters actually could be contaminated upstream with this frack water that's polluting it. It can extravasate into the river itself, and then if we're lucky, we're able to contain it. But if we're not lucky, it's going to go right into our drinking water. And some of these chemicals are not subject to just boiling alerts. Some of these chemicals means that you simply cannot drink the water at all. And it could go on for a long period of time because, we buried this water a mile deep into the ground and it will be seeping out over years and years, maybe decades. And you can imagine what a disaster that would be for the 15 million people who drink off the Delaware River.
It seems to me, it does sound like it would be a disaster.
Yeah.
And it seems to me too, if you don't really know what chemicals to test for, if you don't know what the chemicals are, if they're, because they're proprietary, how do you even alert the public?
Right.
Well,
this is another whole issue, is that if we were really concerned first and foremost about people's public health, we would insist that all the well waters have baseline testing done before we even begin fracking, that we constantly monitor the well waters to make sure that fracking contamination hasn't occurred. If we find this fracking contamination that's occurred, we immediately shut down those wells and we put people on bottled water or some other source. But what do you do when it's a river? Then it really becomes quite problem. What do you tell people? You can't ever use the river for the next decade? You can't do that. Which is the reason why I think you have to ban fracking. You can't even allow this process to happen because this is like a Pandora's box waiting to be opened that would be a total disaster, and we can't afford to let this happen.
Can I ask you, do you feel that it would be a disaster in case of, like, say, an earthquake or Hurricane Irene? We just had both of those incidents happen because of some kind of a spill, or just because of over time it's just not logical to believe that all these chemicals can be washed in and out of these wells?
Yeah. Well, to seal the wells, they talk about the cement liner that actually would encase for a mile deep into the ground. Somehow or another, it's going to make the bend and curve when they do the curve there. I don't know how they verify to make sure that there's no breakage in the cement itself, but assuming that all this is done perfectly, to even believe that the cement itself would last 100 years defies belief. And the truth is that anyone who's ever had trees grow near sidewalks or has watched water damage happen knows that concrete only lasts, maybe 5 to 10 years before it starts cracking and breaking up. Any one of those cracks could be conduits for that water to leak out and get into our groundwater. And our aquifers have to be there for like 1 million years and available to provide fresh water to our children and their children and their children. And as soon as we contaminate any one of these aquifers with broken concrete linings, we've contaminated that aquifer for the rest of its useful life. And there's no way of undoing it.
Well, what can we do to try and stop this?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think most Americans, or most people in Pennsylvania, do not understand the full ramifications of it. If they heard or thought about it, they'd start realizing that this fracking idea is really a bad idea. Now, the industry claims that it can be done environmentally friendly and safe and so on. But if you think about the logic of this, I mean, the amount of frack water that you need to just do one well is somewhere around 4 to 6 million gallons. Do one well. We're talking about building like 10 to 30,000 of these wells, and to naively think that we could put 4 to 6 million gallons times 30,000 wells into the water, never have any of them leak at all, never to contaminate our groundwater is beyond belief. It's preposterous. It won't happen, and it's a disaster that's waiting to happen. So I think we have to tell people to stop doing this. Now, it turns out that the Delaware River Basin Commission is going to make a decision, they've already announced, about whether they will allow fracking. And that decision is going to be announced somewhere in West Trenton, I think it is. And we think, actually, if they decide to allow fracking, that we should actually speak up, be vocal about our opposition about this, because I think that it's going to ruin our drinking water, and it's something that is not worth any price at all that we would pay to do that. The price of living
Bottled
in
water
Pennsylvania.
is obviously not, a solution.
Yeah, that's not
course,
a solution.
but
You're not going to shower with this. What are you going to do,
what would you, if you had to say, what is your biggest personal concern in all that you've seen in this issue, not just necessarily the human health? Well, just you tell me.
Well, my biggest concern is that our collected leaders and politicians are not even talking on the same page about banning fracking. They're debating about whether we should have a severance tax, which basically means that they agree that we should do fracking, but will charge some nominal amount of money for this impact fee for doing this. But once the genie is out of the bottle on this one, and fracking continues, and no matter how much impact fee they will pick up, it will never be enough to purify the water that they have contaminated. And that's just a price that's not worth paying. There's no way that they can make up the difference for what they will have done to destroy the water supply. And as most of us know, the new oil issue for the 21st century is going to be water. There's more scarcer amounts of water out there, and we should be very careful and protective of the water that's already available for our drinking supply.
Well, Dr. Su, thank you very much for coming and talking to us about this today.
Well, you're welcome.
So what are these chemicals? Are they safe? Well, that's the problem. We don't know. Gas companies are not required to let us know what chemicals they use in fracking. And that's a problem for water departments too, because they don't know what to monitor for. Nearly half of the chemicals that scientists do know about are called endocrine disruptors. These are chemicals that play havoc with the finely balanced endocrine system in humans. We spoke with environmental medicine physician Dr. Pune Saberi about her research into adverse health effects from fracking.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
So can you explain what it is that you do and how you got into it?
I'm a family medicine physician by training, and several years ago I took a class in environmental health, and then I started to help teach the class, and I read about what are all the compounds that could be in water, what could they do to your health. There was a talk of what are called endocrine disruptors as kind of the emerging contaminants of the 21st century. And then about a year ago, I read something about the chemicals that go into frac fluid and how so many of them can act as endocrine disruptors. And to me, when we're thinking about how to get these out of water, it was amazing that they were being put in the water. And so that's how I became more and more involved into learning about what is this process and what's going on and why is it happening now.
Can you describe some of the chemicals that are involved in fracking and what are endocrine disruptors?
Sure. Dr. Theo Colburn, who's a doctor in Colorado and also New York, they did a study where they essentially categorized what type of chemicals are contained in the frac fluid. And a large category were the endocrine disruptors. And that's why she has the Endocrine Disruption Exchange website, where you can go on and you can see which one of these chemicals are classified as endocrine disruptors and what could they possibly do.
And can you tell us what can they possibly do?
Sure. Endocrine disruptors are compounds that could be found in your environment, and what they do is effectively they change your endocrine axis, right? So, humans, a lot of what we do is based on our hormonal system, right? I mean, the big thing that comes to mind is the reproductive system, but that's not the only system. The pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the adrenal gland, all of these glands in the body, they operate on a hormonal, they send hormonal messages to each other. So a lot of these endocrine disruptors could interfere with that messaging process, and over the long run, they could lead to disruption in what's a physiological process in the body. So then you could have problems with your reproductive health, with your thyroid, testosterone, estrogen, pituitary, all of these different glands, not to mention the fact that they could be oncogenic, meaning cancer-causing. Leukemia, lymphoma. The issue about endocrine disruptors is that they don't typically follow the dose-response relationship. So if a little bit causes this much effect, more doesn't necessarily cause this much effect, and less could actually cause more effect. So because the body is it's very smart. It doesn't just kind of look at a compound, it looks at how much of it is there, if it's in a pulsatile motion, so for example, whereas a large amount could downregulate the production of a hormone, a small amount could upregulate it. So, and then not to mention the fact that when they are contained as a cocktail in water, the kind of synergistic effect might be bigger. The United States has one of the best water acts in the world. Our water is very well regulated and protected. We are very protected by Clean Water Act. And the natural gas industry is exempt from giving us that protection. They're not just exempt from that. There's 6 other environmental laws. For example, the Right to Know Act. If they find something in your community, they're supposed to tell you. They're exempt from that.
Oh my goodness.
The Clean Air Act. So if there's emissions into the air, you have to report that. They're exempt from that. So there's 7 environmental laws that they're exempt from.
What can we do about this?
The protectingourwaters.com is the blog for the grassroots organization that I volunteer for, and they do a great job of summarizing all of this. You can go there, and there's a ton of information on there. That website is also really good for having templates for letters that you can write to your senators, to your legislatures, to all your local authorities, to the mayor.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's a lot of really excellent information, and we will be certain to make sure that people know what they can do to do more, because we want to stay healthy here in Philadelphia.
Yes, absolutely. Keep Philadelphia healthy. Don't frack with Philadelphia.
The industry claims that frac fluids are safe, but a growing number of people are concerned, and both New York City and Philadelphia's City Council have called for a study about the long-term effects of drilling.
We want an environmental impact statement. Just tell us that those residents that will be impacted in all the counties that are represented here today, those of us who live in the Schuylkill and Delaware River Basin area, just show us that our high-quality, clean drinking water will not be impacted. Is that reasonable?
Yes!
Are we still waiting? Yes, we are.
Recently, City Council agreed unanimously to join a lawsuit to stop fracking should the Basin Commission allow it. Their next meeting is November 21st.
Activists hope lots of concerned citizens will show up, even though public commenting on the rules is over. The commission received 69,000 public comments on fracking earlier this year. People at the rally worried about their water, their air, their property values, and the long-term health risks accumulation of these chemicals could lead to. But their biggest fear was that nobody was listening.
I don't frack with me, no. I won't frack with you. Go frack yourself, bro. Go home.
I'm Karen Hunt for Reproductive Justice Now. Protesters gathered in Harrisburg against Senate Bill 732 and others designed to add restrictions to abortion in the state. In the days ahead, the House will debate this bill, whether standalone abortion providers should be regulated as ambulatory surgical facilities. Hundreds of men and women have gathered to let the state legislature know that they have had enough. They've had enough of legislation that limits women's access to abortion. Dr. Kermit Gosnell, an unlicensed obstetrician in Philadelphia, was indicted on several charges of murder and his clinic shut down. Gosnell preyed on low-income women. Senate Bill 732 is portrayed as a protective measure, but feminist groups say anti-abortion legislators are using the incident to shut down abortion access in the state. In a minute, we'll talk to Rebecca Foley of Women's Way, one of the organizers of this event. But first, the anti-abortion view. We were approached by Michael Chico Chopo, who is the executive director of the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation, for his views.
We're standing with the legislature in Harrisburg in developing regulations to regulate abortion facilities. Too many women have been injured and killed in abortion facilities in Pennsylvania, and it's time that they have standards that must be met.
You said that too many women have been killed in abortion clinics in Pennsylvania. Are you just talking about the one abortion clinic in Philadelphia?
The one in Philadelphia, the Gosnell Clinic, is the one we know of for sure because there's been an indictment, but there have been other rumors of things like that have happened.
But aren't those just rumors, and isn't it true that there are multiple layers of regulations already in place to make sure that abortion providers in Pennsylvania are safe and do provide safe care? And
No, that's not true. There are more regulations over hair salons and nail salons than there are over abortion facilities in Pennsylvania. And abortion is a surgical procedure that should have the same standard as other ambulatory surgery clinics.
Most doctors agree abortion is actually one of the safest of medical procedures, with small risk of complications. Dr. Parker, what do you do and how would this law affect you?
Well, I'm an abortion provider, and I provide services at Philadelphia Women's Center in Philadelphia. I provide in the type of setting that would be affected by this legislation. Well, I'm here because I understand that women, 1 in 3 women in their lives will have an abortion. And abortion care is safest when it's available, readily available. It's already heavily regulated and well controlled, and doctors are best in providing good care. So this rally today was to make clear that any legislation that will undermine women's access to safe, legal abortion care jeopardizes the health of women in the Commonwealth.
This, the pro-life view is that this legislation that's introduced, that they're talking about today, will actually be protecting women's health. How do you see it?
Well, my response to that would be, as the late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but no one's entitled to their own facts. And the facts are, abortion care is extremely safe. The fact that there was one physician who was found to be guilty of egregious practices is in no way reflective of the status of abortion care in this community. At Philadelphia Women's Center, where I work, we work closely with the Department of Health to make sure that the application of those standards in terms of what to look for and how to monitor safety in clinics, we help them to refine those standards. So any notion that abortion care is unsafe in the Commonwealth is just not rooted in anything factual.
We have heard the argument that this would make abortion safer for women. What do you think?
You know, this has nothing to do with improving safety for women. In fact, it will jeopardize women's safety. The thing that we all have to remember is any restrictions that you put in front of, between a woman and access to abortion don't decrease the incidence of abortion. This has been proven over and over again. What they do decrease is the incidence of safe abortion.
And does abortion merit ambulatory treatment?
No, it absolutely does not.
Are there laws already in place that you comply with?
Absolutely. Abortion, in fact, is the most highly regulated medical procedure in Pennsylvania. It's
already, not including this bill, right?
It's already very, very regulated. We have 24-hour waiting periods, parental consent, etc. We are regulated by 5 independent bodies. What should be happening is abortion facilities should be inspected on a regular basis to prevent what happened at Dr. Gosnell's facility. By imposing these new regulations and putting the existing safe providers out of business, you ironically create more opportunities for physicians like Dr. Gosnell to take advantage of poor women.
We're talking to Rebecca Foley of Women's Way, one of the organizers of today's event. Rebecca, why did so many women come here today?
So many women, and enlightened men as well, came here to tell the legislature of Pennsylvania that we've had enough of these attacks on women. The legislature here in Pennsylvania has spent over 30% of its time in session trying to restrict women's access to abortion. And we're here to say that is not appropriate. We are not going to take it anymore. We do not want them spending their time legislating what a woman can do with their body, and we are here to say to legislators to vote no on these bills. We want legislators to spend their time making Pennsylvania a better place for women and their families, not taking away our rights.
Can you describe some of the bills that have come up since January that have been a threat to women?
Yes. So the first bill where we're trying to defeat is Senate Bill 3, which would ban women from buying coverage that includes abortion coverage in the new health insurance exchanges that will be set up as part of health care reform. So even if a woman wants to buy even for women who are buying coverage, insurance coverage with their own money, they will not have the option to get abortion coverage. And currently, over 80% of insurance companies cover abortion. So this will really be taking away this necessary, safe procedure for women that is really important for women's health and lives. Away from women, they won't even have the option to purchase it.
And what about the bill that we're here for today?
Sure. So the other bill, Senate Bill 732, is a real focus of today because it is one of the worst abortion laws that would be on Pennsylvania's books if it were to pass. And this bill would require that abortion procedures be under ambulatory surgical facility regulations, which would, there are very erroneous and burdensome regulations that abortion providers would have to abide by for all procedures here in Pennsylvania. Just to give you a snippet of what this bill would do, it could have the effect of shutting down all freestanding abortion clinics in Pennsylvania. So women would have to go out of state to get the care they need. We also know that it really could put us back to a time where abortion was illegal because there would be no place for women to go, even though abortion is a legal and safe procedure. So we are trying to defeat this bill today, this very scary bill that would have a devastating impact on women's lives.
What can we do next?
So what you can do is join the We've Had Enough community. There is an online community of over 1,000 supporters right now in Pennsylvania and beyond that have come together to say we've had enough on these attacks on women's health. And so you can go to the website We've Had Enough PA and join us that way, and you can sign a petition, you can join us on Twitter and Facebook, but just go to our website and you can join us that way, and we encourage you to do so. We need as many people saying we've had enough.
Rebecca Foley, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen.
Thanks for watching Reproductive Justice Now. I'm Karen Hunt.